All right, let's lock in. So as promised, we're going to go in deep detail into every single fitness test you need to know for the BTEC course. I couldn't fit them all into the Unit 5 video for BTEC just because I didn't want the video to be too long. But in this video, we're going to look at every single test, even the ones that can be a little bit tricky to understand. We're going to simplify everything. So we're going to start with flexibility test. And first, we're going to look at the sit and reach test. Very, very straightforward. It's basically what it says. So sit and reach test. This is working on the hamstrings plus lower back. And the sit and reach test looks something like this. So let's say this is the participants sitting down. My drawing might not be the best. I'm gonna try anyways. This is them sitting down. That's their arms being stretched out. Legs placed against the box here. And the box has a ruler extending, laying down on top of it. The ruler for measurement of the stretch. And they're reaching out as far as they can. And basically, the measurement is basically where their arm gets to. So if the arm gets here, then this is the distance of the stretch that you're measuring. Let's call it D. If their arm gets all the way here, then this would be the distance that you're measuring. So that is the main outcome of the sit and reach test. It's that distance. So in this video, I'm just going to be showing you, visualizing what the test looks like, because I feel like you can know the theory behind the test, but seeing what it looks like makes a huge difference. So if you want to know the theory and the reliability controls and the equipment and all of that theory stuff, go and actually watch the Unit 5 video. But once you watch the Unit 5 videos and you feel like you still need to understand the test a bit more, that's when you come to this video. So that's a sit and reach test. Now, I'm going to look at the shoulder flexibility test. This is another one that is just very vague, because what does shoulder flexibility mean? Okay, so the shoulder flexibility test is often done with a pole or a rod. Some people call it a dowel, or you can use a broomstick as well. So if we were to draw it out, let's say this is your athlete here. This is their arms here. The arms stretching out, holding on to this rod or broomstick or whatever it is. Basically, they would be performing some type of movement with it. So it might be that they're trying to see how far back they can bring their arms, or it might be that they're trying to see how far to the side they can pull the rod to work on that flexibility in the shoulders, but also in the lats a little bit. So there's not really one standard way of doing this test. It's just having a rod and then doing different movements. So it could be, like I said before, the backwards movement. It might be even a forwards stretch. It might be a sideways stretch. Whatever stretch it is, it's just making sure that the stretch is working on shoulder flexibility and finding a way to measure it. So this is quite hard to measure, because what do you actually measure? The closest thing to actually measuring the stretch here, you could say, is the angle. So the angle by which the person pulls the rod backwards or forwards or sideways. But move on to calf flexibility. This one, again, very, very straightforward. So with calf flexibility, you have a wall, and that's our floor right there. So you would place your arms against the wall normally, and then have your foot a certain distance away from the wall, a few inches away from the wall. And make sure your foot is flat on the ground. Make sure your heel isn't coming off the ground when you do this. That's a very pointy kneecap. Make sure your foot isn't coming off the ground when you do this. Leave a certain distance away from the wall. Usually it's around 8 centimeters that is left. And the goal here is, while keeping your foot flat on the ground, you want to get your knee as close to the wall as possible. The closer your knee is to the wall, the better your ankle mobility, your ankle flexibility is, and the better your calf flexibility is, and the better your dorsiflexion is. So this is a really important test for a lot of athletes in basketball, football, and also when you're trying to squat better, a physiotherapist would probably test your calf flexibility using this test, because the squat movement is very dependent on having enough dorsiflexion. So that's the calf flexibility stretch. Now let's move on to trunk rotation. And again, a good thing with a lot of these tests is they tell you exactly what they are. So trunk rotation, what is it? Rotating the trunk. Again, this one, there are several variations, and it's really up to the tester to sort of structure it in a way that works for the athlete. So one variation is to actually, for the participant to sit down. Let's see if we can draw this. Participant to sit down, and I don't think I can draw this properly. Okay, let's use a stickman here. Stickman, participant sitting down. Let's say this is a bench they're sitting down on, and usually they would stretch both arms out straight in front of them, and the task is to rotate their trunk towards either side without moving their legs, right? So just focusing on rotating the trunk to either side. So this is just like turning around, looking to the right as far as you can, then turning around, looking to the left as far as you can. Another variation is the exact same movement, but this time just standing up. So again, both arms pointed forward, and then just trying to rotate left and then rotate right. Another rotation you might see with athletes is a physio will take the athlete and then lay them down. So let's say there's an athlete laying down, arms next to their body. They're laying down on a massage bed or whatever, on a table, and the physio will tell them or will assist them in moving their legs. So let's say their legs are joined together. Yeah, so their legs are joined together and their knees are bent. So let's see how we can draw that. Legs are joined together and knees are bent like this. So the physio will try and get them to be able to rotate or to lean their legs over to either side, left and right. So think about yourself right now, laying down flat on the bed, face looking forward up at the ceiling, arms down flat next to your body. And then you lift your legs up in a way where there's a 90-degree angle at the knee, so your legs are elevated, right? Your thigh is vertically upwards, but your lower leg is elevated. So your upper leg and your lower leg are making a 90-degree angle like this, right? And this is you're laying down on the bed, the 90-degree angle between your upper leg and your lower leg, and then the physio will tell you to try and lean your legs to either side. So lean your leg this side and then lean it to the other side. So that's what's going on here in this test, and that's another way to measure trunk rotation. I hope that makes sense. All right, now on to the strength test. A lot of these we're not even going to have to look at this, because something like the 1 rep max test, which is one of the strength tests, we don't even have to draw this out. Again, like we spoke about in the unit 1 video, 1 rep max is just lifting a really heavy weight that you can only lift for 1 repetition and lifting it with correct technique. So we don't have to really talk too much about that because we've already spoken about that in the unit 5 video, which if you haven't watched and you want to catch up on those tests, you can go and watch that. The grip dynamometer test. Let's draw this one out. So this is the participant, this is their arm, this is their hand going down to their arm, their arm here, and let's draw the rest of the body there, and then let's see, this is them, boom, 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 whatever. So that's them gripping onto the grip dynamometer device, which looks something like this. Looks like a sort of a handle. So this grip dynamometer device has a display here that basically shows the force that is being applied onto it. And basically the way it works is the performer, the participant, will grip it and squeeze as hard as possible with their dominant arm, and do that for maybe 3-5 times, and then pick the highest score of those 3 or 5 times that they do it, and that's their score. So again, very straightforward, just drawing it out so you can have a sense of what it looks like. Okay, next for the 7-stage abdominal test, we've already spoken about this in the unit 5 BTEC video. So if you want to get all of the theory and all of the details behind that, I would encourage you to watch that video. We don't have to speak about it here because it's very straightforward. This test is just doing progressively difficult stages of abdominal movement. So the first stage might be doing a simple exercise, and then the second stage it gets harder, and the third stage it gets harder, and then it just gets harder and harder and harder and harder and harder as the stages go on. Okay, now on to aerobic endurance tests. Gonna start with the multi-stage fitness test, or the bleep or the bleep test. So just so we can see what this looks like, I'm just gonna draw it out again. So the bleep test works like this. You have a flat surface and you have cones marking out the distance. So the distance, standard distance, is 20 meters. You have all the participants lined up on the starting line. Let's just draw one participant here just for the simplicity of explaining it. You have the participants lined up here at the start line. They're gonna run up and down this distance, making sure that they finish 1 lap. So 1 lap is going up and back within 1 beep. So there's going to be a device, probably someone's phone, that's going to be set to make beeping sounds. Right, so it's going to be beep, 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 at given intervals. So at the beginning, there's going to be a long distance between each beep. So it might be like 10 seconds between each beep. So it would be very easy to run up and down in 10 seconds because it would be like beep and then beep. But then as the test goes on, the beeps get closer and closer together. So as you progress in the test, they might get to a point where it's like beep, 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 beep. So it gets to the point where you're just sprinting up and down, sprinting, 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 sprinting. And usually this test is done with a bunch of people, and whoever wins is the person that can last the longest without failing. So you would fail if you didn't complete laps within the beep. Right now we have the VO2 max test. This is usually done on a treadmill. So this is very popular in football when a footballer is being transferred to another club. Usually they do something called a medical, which is where they just do a bunch of fitness tests to determine where their fitness levels are. And one of the fitness tests they do is a VO2 max test. So let's say this is a treadmill right here. The athlete will be running on a treadmill, and there will be some sort of device, some sort of mask connected to their mouth and nose to be able to collect data about their breathing and how much oxygen that they are utilizing. And that device is going to be plugged in to some sort of machine somewhere, and that data from their breathing and how much oxygen they're using is going to be used to measure their VO2 max. So that is the VO2 max test. Okay, now for the 12-minute Cooper run test. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on this because it's pretty straightforward, but just to draw it out so we can visualize it. Let's say it's being done on a track, on a full track, for example. This is the track here. That's the track with the lines and all of that. And the goal of the 12-minute run test is, I remember doing this in high school actually. You have all the participants lined up, and then boom, you start your timer. They run for 12 minutes, and basically measuring the distance that the participant covers in 12 minutes. So yeah, that's basically it. There's also a 12-minute swim test, but you don't really need to know that for this spec. Okay, next is the Harvard step test. Again, you have your participant and they have the box, 45 centimeter box, chilling right there. So they start by standing next to the box, and then they start stepping on and then back to off the box continuously for 5 minutes at a good pace, so around a 30 step per minute pace, on and off, 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 on and off. And also you want to do that with good form. So a lot of times people would cheat, and when they're stepping on the box to make it easier and to cheat, they might lean forward a little bit to step on the box. So you want to watch out for technique. But that's basically the Harvard step test. Very straightforward. We didn't need to spend too much time on it. Next, we're going to look at the Rockport walk test, which again, we don't need to spend too much time on that one, because the Rockport walk test, if you watch the Unit 5 video, it's basically you walk a mile as fast as possible, you record the time and the heart rate, and you use that to estimate VO2 max. Okay, next Speed test again, we're not gonna spend too much time on this because it's pretty straightforward. You just have the participant ready to go, covering a certain distance. For this spec, it can be 20 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, or 60 meters sprint distance, and you just time how quickly they can cover that distance, and you use that to measure their speed. So speed, distance over time, or you can just stick to measuring the time that that distance is being covered over. That's still a good measurement to have. Okay, again, very straightforward. Muscular endurance tests. All three of them are actually very easy. The 1 minute press up test is exactly what it says. You do push ups for 1 minute and you measure how many reps you do. And then the 1 minute sit up test is also exactly what it says. You do sit ups for 1 minute and it's exactly the same as press ups. You measure, you count how many reps. So let's just draw down right here. This is the mannequin doing push ups up and down, push ups for 1 minute. The mannequin here doing sit ups, going up and down for 1 minute. And then the wall sit test, this is the wall right here. So you would place yourself leaning on the wall, flat leaning on the wall, and then basically take the position of a chair where you would support your body with your legs, but your legs are extended out of your body on the floor, and you're trying to keep that stable posture with your back flat on the wall, and then measuring the time that you can hold this for. And that's the outcome of this test, simply the time. Okay, now for the skin fold test, this is a body composition test. The first test we're going to look at skin fold test. It's again just like what it says, right? So if we were to draw someone's skin, let's say this is a section of someone's stomach, and the skin fold is getting a pinch of their skin, right? So let's say this is a stomach area. The device, let's say it's like a pinching device. You pinch a little bit of the skin here. Says a little bit of the skin was pinched with these pinches, this pinching device, and then that's it. You pinch the skin and you measure, and that's it. And it can be measured over time to see how it changes. For our next body composition test, we have BIA, or bioelectric impedance. So here's how this test works. So you have your person here. You get connected to the bioelectric impedance device. Let's call it BIA device. You don't have to know the actual name, but it gets connected to a device. And this is the person's arm. The device gets connected to their arm here, to the legs here, to the ankle. And then this electrical device sends electrical impulses, and those impulses are used to calculate the body composition of the body. So it gives you the water content in the body, the fat content, protein content, and even mineral content. So it's a very specialist way of measuring body composition. Next, we have BMI. We've spoken about this. BMI is just the mass, which you can measure on a scale, divided by the height, which you can measure with a ruler in meters squared. Actually, you square it. So BMI is kilogram per meter squared, and that's really it. Now girth measurements, again, very simple. It's just taking the circumference at the waist, at the limbs, or at the hip. That's it. Okay, now let's move on to agility. Let's start with the Illinois test. We're gonna create more space here for the Illinois test. I feel like it needs more space to really draw out the distances and everything. So we're gonna start with the Illinois agility test. And the way this is designed is you would have some cones or some markers. So you'd have one cone here, one cone here, third cone, fourth cone, another cone here, another cone here, another cone here, another cone here. And this is a starting point. This is the finishing point. Okay, so the participant starts here, sprints to this cone, does a sharp turn, sprints here, and then sort of wiggles between these cones, sprinting while changing direction as well between these cones, and comes out, and then sprint here, does a sharp turn, and then finishes. So this middle part here is really the most challenging part, because they're trying to go as fast as possible while changing direction. And the distance between each of these cones is 3.3 meters for each of them. And these distances here, 10 meters, 10 meters. This isn't up to scale, but this distance between the start and the finish cone, 5 meters. So that's the Illinois agility test. Now, how about the T-test? So it's a very similar thing. The T-test just has less cones and it's in the shape of a T. So let's place our cones right here. 4 cones making up a T. This is a start and the finish line. Start and finish line. So the participant starts from here. Boom. They sprint up to the second cone. And then boom. They side shuffle. So when moving in line with these cones, they're not sprinting forwards or backwards. They're sprinting sideways. They're side shuffling. So they go, sprint right, and then sprint all the way to the other side, and then come back, and then go back to the finish line. So that's basically a T shape, because they're coming here, going there, going there, coming here, going there. And the distances from the start to this first cone is 10 meters, and then the distance between these cones here is 5 meters each. So that's the T-test. Now onto the balance test. Very straightforward. The stalk stand test is just standing, balancing on one leg. So let's say this is the ground, balancing on one leg and seeing how long you can hold that single stance position. And then the beam walk is on a beam, so you can imagine gymnasts would probably benefit from a test like that, because they use a lot of beams for a lot of the routines that they do. So the participant would walk across a beam, boom, walk across the beam while controlling the movement without falling off. So that's the difference. This measures static balance, and this tests dynamic balance. Next, we have coordination. Very straightforward. We don't even have to draw this, but if we were to draw this, that's the wall. You're here. You have a little ball. Just throwing the ball against the wall and catching it, throwing it and catching it, throwing it and catching it, and just counting how many successful catches you have. That's it. And then we move on to power. We have 3 tests for power. Vertical jump test is very straightforward. Let's say you're standing facing a wall, right? And let's say when you stand normally and you raise your arms, they reach to this point. So you can mark this point with chalk or something. You have a piece of chalk in your arms, in your hand, you mark it with chalk. That's the normal standing height. And then once you jump as high as possible with that chalk in your hand, you mark that higher spot. And the outcome of this test is measuring the distance between those 2 spots. And the distance, let's call it D, is the outcome. Now, standing long jump is very straightforward. You have a particular distance, and from standing, you basically jump as far as you can, and you measure that distance that you've covered. Now, the Wingate test is also a very specialist test, like some tests that we've looked at previously, like the BIA test. So it's probably going to be conducted in a lab of some sorts with scientists and really high tech equipment. So the Wingate test is done on cycling equipment. So let's say we have a stationary bike here. Let's just say that's a stationary bike, and we have the participant here. They're gonna cycle as quickly as they can for 30 seconds. So all out sprint on the cycle, just cycling as fast as they can. And the way this is used to get an outcome is their power output is measured in 5-second intervals over the course of 30 seconds. So they cycle full out for 30 seconds, and in 5-second intervals, their power output is measured. Obviously, the power output is expected to drop over 30 seconds because you can't maintain maximal power output for 30 seconds. So let's say this is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. The power outputs are being measured in 5-second intervals. Let's rub this out so we can have more space. So let's draw that graph again at the top here. Yeah, boom, 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 boom. Power output from the peak. Let's say peak power or highest power is A, and then lowest power is B, and then you have the power intervals in between A and B. So the way it's measured is there's something called the fatigue index, right? And the fatigue index is done by taking A, which is the highest power, minus the lowest power B, times 100 divided by the highest power. So that's the outcome of this test, the fatigue index. Okay, lastly, we have reaction time. So reaction time test, the ruler drop test for reaction time is usually done with 2 people. So the tester would hold a ruler. Let's draw a ruler here, right here. The tester is here, holding on to the ruler, right here. And the participants is right here with their hand ready to catch the ruler, but not touching the ruler just yet, just right there at the bottom tip, ready to catch the ruler. And so, without giving the tester, without giving the participant, so this is the participant, the tester will drop the ruler without any warning, without any notice. And it's the participant's job to clench their fingers and catch the ruler as quickly as possible. And let's say once the ruler has been dropped, the participant caught it somewhere here, somewhere right here. So that distance from the bottom here up onto here will be used to measure the reaction time, or just the distance by itself could be a good enough outcome, right? Because if you get a greater distance, that means your reaction time is slower. If you get a smaller distance, for example, if you caught it when it was still all the way at the bottom here, that means your reaction time is a lot higher.